Hello everyone, this is Pinay Red Rose here to talk about Lois Lowry's The Giver. I bought the complete series around March and I finally just finished reading it. And her overall writing was pretty decent. Here are all 4 books: The Giver, Gathering Blue, Messenger, and Sun. I think the covers are pretty neat. Okay, so I am going to start with the first book, The Giver. Let's see, in the back it says, The Giver, the 1994 Newbery Medal winner, has become one of the most influential novels of our time. The haunting story centers on 12-year-old Jonas, who lives in a seemingly ideal, if colorless, world of conformity and contentment. Not until he is given his life assignment as the receiver of memory does he begin to understand the dark, complex secrets behind his fragile community. So yes, the author comes up with a society that is basically, in a way, kind of rigid and very structural, and basically the giver is the one that holds basically all the knowledge from the earth's past, basically her idea of the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge that the giver also has is Earth's history prior to a catastrophic event that changes the world. The main character, Jonas, basically becomes the receiver of all this knowledge that the giver is to pass on to him. Now, the idea of this knowledge being transferred from the giver to the receiver is so that the people can remain ignorant and their society can stay the same. Right here on page 91, Jonas wasn't interested, just then, in wisdom. It was the colors that fascinated him. Why can't everyone see them? Why did colors disappear? The giver shrugged. Our people made that choice. The choice to go to sameness. Before my time, before the previous time, back and back and back. We relinquished color when we relinquished sunshine and did away with differences. He thought for a moment. We gained control of many things, but we had to let go of others. We shouldn't have, Jonas said fiercely. The giver looked startled at the certainty of Jonas's reaction. Then he smiled wryly. You've come very quickly to that conclusion, he said. It took me many years. Maybe your wisdom will come much more quickly than mine. So as Jonas learns more and more, he starts to see under the facade of the supposedly perfect utopian society, because everything is planned out from birth to death. And nothing is as it seems when people are released from this society. Now, because of what Jonas knows, he makes plans to leave the society. I'm not going to go on any further because I don't want to spoil it for anybody that plans on reading The Giver. One part of The Giver that I did not like was when Jonas had gotten his instruction as receiver of memory. And right here, Jonas, receiver of memory. 1. Go immediately at the end of school hours each day to the annex entrance behind the house of the old and present yourself to the attendant. 2. Go immediately to your dwelling at the conclusion of training hours each day. 3. From this moment you are exempted from rules governing rudeness. You may ask any question of any citizen and you will receive answers. 4. Do not discuss training with any other member of the community, including parents and elders. 5. From this moment, you are prohibited from dream telling. 6. Except for illness and injury unrelated to your training, do not apply for any medication. 7. You are not permitted to apply for release. 8. You may lie. The reason I don't like this part of the book is because it may cause cognitive dissonance and affect the moral compass of a lot of young readers today. Anybody that is aware can actually see a little bit of psychology at play here as Jonas reacts to these new instructions and rules. The exemption for rudeness startled him. Reading it again, however, he realized that it didn't compel him to be rude. It simply allowed him the option. He was quite certain he would never take advantage of it. He was so thoroughly accustomed to courtesy within the community that the thought of asking another citizen an intimate question, of calling someone's attention to an area of awkwardness, was unnerving. Because of the way Jonas was brought up, of course he will be startled by the new rules and instructions. But as time goes on and he gains more and more knowledge from the Giver, his way of thinking starts to change. All the way here in chapter 13, he talks about making choices. The Giver told him that it would be a very long time before he had the colors to keep. But I want them, Jonas said angrily. It isn't fair that nothing has color. Not fair? The Giver looked at Jonas curiously. Explain what you mean. Well, Jonas had to stop and think it through. If everything's the same, then there aren't any choices. I want to wake up in the morning and decide things, a blue tunic or a red one. He looked down at himself, at the colorless fabric of his clothing, but it's all the same, always. Then he laughed a little. I know it's not important what you wear. It doesn't matter, but it's the choosing that's important, isn't it? The Giver asked him. These changes in his way of thinking leads Jonas to try and pass on some of the knowledge to the community, almost akin to Prometheus bringing fire from the gods. But certain events, of course, move him to leave his community as soon as possible. But I won't get into that. Like I said earlier, I won't get into that because I'm not going to spoil it. Here is the second book, Gathering Blue. When I started reading this book, I thought it was a completely different story that surrounded the character named Kira. But it is a different perspective, not a different story. Okay, so here it says, Kira, an orphan with a twisted leg, lives in a world where the weak are cast aside. She fears for her future until she is spared by the all-powerful Council of Guardians. Kira is a gifted weaver and is assigned a task that no other community member can carry out. Though her talent keeps her alive and brings certain privileges, Kira soon realizes mysteries and secrets surround her. No one must know of her plans to uncover the truth about her world and to find out what exists beyond it. So in this story, the character actually tries to fit in with her community versus trying to leave the community like Jonas does. The author does take the story into a different direction, and the characters in the story are gifted with artistic talents and have certain knowledge, and the gifts and the knowledge that they have are seen as magical. This is the third book called Messenger. This is the book that brings the other two books together. The Giver and Gathering Blue. This is how they all come together. Now, in The Messenger, the story revolves around a boy named Maddie that was a secondary character within Gathering Blue. Here is one aspect that brings the story together. In the place called Beyond, Leader's consciousness met Kira's, and they curled around each other like wisps of smoke in greeting. "We are wounded," she told him, "and lost. I am hurt too, and captured here," he replied. With the exchange, they drifted dangerously apart. Where he stood, Leader could feel the vine now. His knee buckled as the sharp-toothed stem bit. He tried to reach for it, but his hands were entangled too. With great effort, his consciousness touched hers again. "Ask the boy for help," he told her. "Do you mean Maddie?" "Yes, though it is not his true name. Tell him we need his gift now. Our world does." So this is the book that connects them, and Jonas is mentioned in the book. He is brought into the picture. The author does a really good job of bringing the story full circle. She does a really good job of bringing it around and bringing it into a complete circle. This is the last book, called Sun. It's a lot thicker than the other three. And I'm going to be honest about this book. I thought it was boring, and to me, it isn't really needed within the quartet. It isn't really needed, in my viewpoint. It's as if she put an ugly brown bow on top of a neatly wrapped package. So that's my viewpoint on this book. And it surrounds a character named Claire. Here in the back it says, "They called her Water Claire when she washed up on their shore. No one knew that she came from a society where emotions and colors didn't exist, that she had become a vessel at age 13, that she had carried a product at age 14, that it had been stolen from her body. Claire had a son, but what became of him she never knew. What was his name? Was he even alive? She was supposed to forget him, but that was impossible. Now Claire will stop at nothing to find her child, even if it means making an unimaginable sacrifice." This story is from the perspective of the character named Claire, who was chosen to be a birth mother within Jonas's community, and she does everything she can to find her lost son. An enemy is presented within the story known as the Trade Master, and Claire makes a deal with the Trade Master in order to find her son, and gives up something of vital importance. And when she finds her son, she mostly just stands there and just watches in the background, pining for her son. The most exciting thing that happens in this book is when Claire climbs a mountainous cliffside. At a critical point in the story, it is her son that has to confront the Trade Master in order to set things right. Because of the way the messenger ended, I don't think that this last book is needed. Honestly, I don't think it's needed. The series doesn't need it. That's just my viewpoint. And you guys can go ahead and read it and decide for yourself whether you like it or not. This is the map that came with the Giver Quortet. The Giver Quortet world. The village of Jonas and the Giver. The village of Kira. The village of Maddie. the village of Clare. One thing to know, distances between villages are very, very large, mapped not to scale. And this is it, the Giver Quortet. I hope you guys enjoyed my video. Thank you for watching, and God bless.